And so it's an absolute honor to be here. Ronnie Pirovino, he's a great friend of ours, fantastic collector, curator, multi-hyphenate. I'm going to get into it and sound like a game show host in like another minute or two and kind of give you guys the whole spiel on everything. But really, it's such a pleasure to have this crew with us and these artists with us today because this is what it's all about. And St. Louis has such a great art-loving community, and we just want to play a little bit of that piece of the puzzle that we can. So we're honestly, round of applause to you guys, because without you guys, there would be no art. Truthfully, every one of us, whether you're a collector or you just go to museums or you go to galleries or you are an artist, everyone has a really vital role in this ecosystem that is art. And just witnessing it is important. So really, that is super cool that you guys are all here for this. So thank you. So a little bit about our talk. So today we're going to be talking about, of course, Jeremy and Catie's 2 solo exhibitions. And we're also going to kind of talk about creativity, what sparks it, what drives it, what influences it, how it influences other things, and how it ends up resonating and sticking in culture. We live in a crazy, weird age all of a sudden where everything is so viral and nothing really tends to stick, or very little actually sticks. We have very viral, like 30 seconds that kind of come and go. And anyone who is trying to grow an Instagram following for their creative business, all these things of algorithms and virality, they probably keep you up at night. And so we kind of want to talk a little bit of just, how things stick with people and how they, permeate through culture a little bit. So without further ado, this is my little game show host spiel. I would love to introduce our panelists, starting with Jeremy Booth. I'm just going to read, so bear with me. Kentucky-based artist Jeremy Booth is known for his bold reinterpretations of the American West, originally emerging through digital illustration and NFT culture while transitioning into traditional painting. He's developed a distinct approach defined by sharp contrast, saturated color, and distilled compositions. His latest solo exhibition, which you're sitting in now, Tough Luck, expands on his vision through a new body of paintings that balances Western iconography and contemporary image making. So a lot of it is starting with photographs that he then distills, going out to actual ranches, and then taking that and sort of minimalizing the composition to what you see today. Catie Cook is a St. Louis-based painter currently, until she makes her little move to New York this summer, exploring themes of girlhood in performance and presentation through imagery rooted in her upbringing in the American South. Catie's a recent MFA graduate from Washington University in St. Louis, and she combines theatrical staging, symbolic imagery, and sharply composed scenes that examine ideas surrounding identity, pageantry, and social expectation. In her exhibition for Sport, she presents a new body of paintings that considers the idea of performance not only as spectacle, but as a learned expectation through the language of theater, the hunt, and vulnerability. Both your guys' shows came out absolutely incredible, so thank you. And Ronnie Pirovino is a contemporary art collector, curator, appraiser, and chief curator of Atrbute, where he works closely with artists across contemporary and emerging spaces. He's widely recognized for assembling one of the most prominent collections of works and objects by cause, if you're aware of the artist. He's been featured in publications and art platforms, including Heritage Auctions, Observer, Artsy, Intelligent Collector, and for his role in shaping conversations around culture and contemporary art markets. And through his curatorial projects and advocacy for artists, he's become a notable voice connecting artists, collectors, and broader cultural audiences. So thank you, Ronnie, for being here. A lot of this is because of you and how you've introduced us to Jeremy, and we've got to pair these awesome shows together. So thank you for really being here with us. So what I kind of want to start with before we get into talking about each of your exhibitions this is a question for all three of you. What's something that's like, as we talk about virality and things, what's something that's actually made you stop and say like, that is cool? Whether it be design or creativity, anything creative, doesn't even have to be, it could be a TikTok reel, like anything, an Instagram reel, TikTok video. What was something that caught your attention and you were like, oh?
I would say, not necessarily something specific comes to mind, but I think there's a level of authenticity that you can kind of capture online. that for me, I spend more time and pay more attention to than just kind of going with the trends of the internet. And so I think for me, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Does it feel and exude authenticity? And that's kind of what I focus on when I'm looking or trying to be inspired or surfing the web.
Do you find that hard for you? Like, especially like in today's age of how quick things move. Like, I find it hard to pay attention to, I see one TikTok video and then.
Well, I would say, this might be a little spicy, but there's a difference between a content creator and an artist, I guess. Absolutely. And not that you can't be an authentic content creator, but I think and we have to play that role too as artists, but there is a level, I don't know, there's like a fine line, I think, of like, we still have to play that role, but not to the extreme to where we're trying to chase virality, I guess. And, still, while also still being authentic to who we are and not like chasing the viral, whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about you?
As a collector, just extending from where Jeremy is leading in terms of authenticity. Authenticity is really kind of the essential component for a collector to really get excited about an artist and artwork, and really care for it, because it's not just an object. It's the story behind the piece. It's the life of the artist. It is something that you have to resonate with. And so social media makes it a lot easier to communicate. However, it also, it's in some ways a way to kind of tell who is kind of fabricating the storyline. So like if you're pretending, then I think that it's easier to tell because of social media, and the story is more evident. But really authenticity, just going back to that, and like hearing about Catie's work and like what she's doing, like I'm being introduced to this work here, so I'm curious about her life experience and how that shapes her work. So with Jeremy, Tabitha, they go out and they take photographs of their subjects. So invariably they become, really connected to that on a level that becomes really substantial, and it shows in the work.
Yeah, and then I think to echo the same sentiments, I've had a lot of success, but also like struggle on social media promoting my own work, and that kind of playing that line between not wanting to come off as an influencer, especially like given that I often like fit the mold of what is successful in the influencer sphere today. But I would say that, an artist who comes to mind that I found on social media, but is, showing with incredible galleries in New York City, LA, Emma Webster stopped me in my tracks. I just saw an image on Instagram. And so I think that, it's good work. It does rise to the top. Yeah, you can feel that authenticity. It's often work that I'm connected to that stops me in my track. But I kind of think of it as like when you're walking in an art museum and a painting makes you stand, or a sculpture makes you stand in front of it and like you just can't look away. I think that can happen on social media in a similar way.
And so what do you think like sparks that as a creator? Like, like what you guys do comes from a very authentic root inside of you. Where does that spark come from for you guys as artists?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just like jump off on that. I think that part of it is like familial. My parents are artists. My dad's a scenic designer. So I sort of grew up in a very artistic environment. And I think that it's a lot, I mean, almost all children are artists, but I think it's like whether you can keep that going into your adulthood, like you keep that spark and keep that creativity. So yeah, I really think it's like a lot of nurturing, and just being in the right environments, allowing yourself to maintain that kind of like childhood whimsy into your adulthood and believe that you can be something unconventional.
I would say for me, as far as the spark specifically for me in my practice, when I first started like painting the West, I hadn't gone out to get reference material or anything of that nature. So I was I was posing like in 3D software cowboys and trying to get the lighting right for reference material, and it just felt really inauthentic. But I mean, it's kind of what I could scrap together to kind of create this new body of and theme of work. And then, but I then received a mentor, and he had me come out to a ranch in Kansas, and we got, you know, my first set of reference material, and the spark was then. It felt authentic. You got to meet those cowboys, hear their story, get in on all the action, and so that really kind of was the big shift for me in my fine art career, was the reference
Like being there in person.
Yeah.
And Ronnie, for you, how do you recognize that? Like as a collector, how do you pick that out from the crowd and say, that's, you know, like, because a lot of the times you're not meeting the artist directly or getting a chance to really dive deep into them. So how do you pick that out from?
So, you know, collecting is an endeavor that can be broad in its involvement, and you know, at some point you have to decide if your collecting is an investment, or your collecting is a hobby, or your collecting is a, you know, kind of like a, you know, once in a while you kind of venture into it and kind of circle back out. But if it becomes an investment, then you really need to talk to the artist and really understand what their motivation is, where their career is going, how long a term of vision that they have for their career. You know, art is not a short-term game. It's potentially decades long in the making. So if you're, as a collector, if you want to get serious with an artist, you really want to get a sense of their commitment and their dedication.
And when do you guys recognize that you know, that thing that sort of clicks for you, right, in each of your practices? When do you put the energy towards that? Like, what does that moment feel like? How do you cultivate that feeling of like, this is the, like you had mentioned going out to the ranches, and like what do you do next? What's the next step? How do you cultivate that idea of like, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm going to be my authentic self as an artist? Curveball a little bit.
Yeah.
Hard question.
Yeah, I could jump into it. I think for me, and I had a mentor in grad school who I told him, you know, I'm not exactly sure why I just can't stop painting the dogs. And he said, I think just follow your compulsion. There's a place for compulsion in artwork. And you don't always know why you're drawn to this certain subject matter or a certain way of painting. But if you sort of like let the art make its own meaning, you know, over like several years of painting Dalmatians, I kind of like realized all of these connections to my personal life, connections to this kind of like Southern pageantry that I've talked about. And, you know, really deep connections are still forming for me. And they just kind of became like a proxy for myself, a sort of self-insert. But I think, yeah, my answer to that is really to trust yourself and trust that there is maybe like some ways in which the art like knows itself, kind of tells on itself, and you'll be able to like work yourself into a meaning if you're, you know, following your spark, following what you feel drawn to. So yeah, compulsion.
Yeah, I'd say conviction, I guess. Just kind of having an awareness through experience and time to know that you want to pursue something and kind of keep at it even when the days are good and bad. You know, Western art, you know, cowboys, that whole lifestyle was something that I wanted to start as kind of like a series, but then, you know, the conviction grew, the love and the adoration for the culture grew. And then at that point, you just kind of know that that's just where you fit in, and you just try your best to keep telling that story through your art and respecting the people that you paint, or for me specifically. And so I'd say conviction, you just kind of through time and effort and experience, just know that like, this is where I'm settling, you know.
Was there something for you that led you to Western iconography? Like, was it something in childhood or whatever it may be?
Definitely childhood and a young adult. I spent most of my time, my career was mainly in commercial art. So subject matter themes always depicted by the client's needs. Style was always the same. I had a very specific style. It's very similar to what you see here. So when I decided to move into fine art, I didn't really have a theme. I didn't have a direction because it was always whatever the client needed.
Okay.
So past experience as a kid, also interest as an adult, I thought that I would just kind of pursue Western art like a series.
Yeah.
It's like I'll just sit here for a little while and then I'll probably move on. Just really a phase of discovery. And then I got conviction. I just like, this is it. How can I push deeper into this as far as my approach, my contemporary approach or whatever. And so still trying to discover new ways to kind of show off this style of American art, I guess. Yeah.
So I like that you brought up sort of like the commission nature. And that's something that whether you're an artist in, doing graphic design work, or whether you're, stuck sort of in the cycle of clients expecting something from you, how much do you, and I'd like to hear Ronnie maybe first, how much should an artist value audience over their own vision?
That's an essential question, because an artist must produce for an audience. There is no point. I mean, there is a point if you just produce work that no one's going to see. But really, the ideal is that there's a symbiosis, that there's a relationship, that the audience is supporting the artwork. They in some ways are affecting the direction of it. So, like, for instance, like if you produce a body of work that happens to get no response, then you might want to make note of that. But that's not necessarily the only deciding factor in, the work that you're producing, or, the subject matter. But at some point you have to take stock of, kind of the audience response and what is being received well, and you have to have patience to get to that point. Sometimes you might be incredibly talented, but be producing work that isn't exactly being received in a way that you want it to be. You might need to shift gears a little bit, but that's where the dedication comes in. Some artists really bug out if their work is not well received, even in one exhibition, which is very unfortunate, because it takes patience to get to really dial your vocabulary. So when you talk about an artist's process and like the images that they produce, it's actually a vocabulary. So it takes a while for this vocabulary to be articulated, to be formed, and it's different for every artist. And it's important to develop your own vocabulary.
Yeah, and I would say, like, to jump off of what you just said about an audience, that was a big question that we were kind of always being asked in grad school, which was like, identify your audience, kind of try to figure out who you're speaking to with your work, and maybe who you're thinking, not necessarily like saleable, but who you could see as a commercial audience. But yeah, so I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and I think that what I kind of have come to from posting my work on social media and sort of like seeing responses roll in, or like seeing, like what work maybe does well in person or does well on the internet or whatever, I've found, and I think it's very lucky, that the ones that I make for myself that I'm thinking, I just really don't know if this is going to hit. Like, maybe I've even shown my parents and they've said, I'm not really so sure about that. Those are usually the ones that have the best response from the public as well. So it's kind of weird that but I guess we've talked about authenticity so much that the ones that you make for yourself, that you make because you're convicted to make them, I think people can feel that in the work. And yeah, I've found that it's the ones that are most well received.
It's like a perfect marriage of your desire to want to create something specific, and you want to create it so badly that also in the same breath, there's an audience out there that really resonates with it. And maybe it's because of your desire and the way that you tell that story, and your story specifically as an artist. It's a good marriage.
Yeah. So before we start to talk about your actual shows, one last sort of question on this topic to kind of round it up is, what keeps you guys, the three of you, creatively engaged? Like, during a time where it's so hard to, you're influenced from every viral thing that you see, you're influenced from, the sort of regular things, friends and family and work. How do you, as creatives and people who nurture creatives, how do you stay engaged throughout the noise of it all?
I'd say for me, leaving a couple times a year to go to different ranches, it's early mornings, late nights. We're out there with the cowboys, just kind of connecting to the land and just away from everything. Really, like can't use our phones because there's really no service. Just kind of disconnecting, I guess, in that way is really helpful. But also, as far as my like in studio practice, probably small things like experimenting with colors in a way that I haven't really done. Because everything is pretty thematic for me, so I know like what I'm going to be painting subject wise, thematic wise. But how are there ways in that I can, in small ways too, like experiment a little bit more, but still make sense. So I'd say getting away, disconnecting, and small things in my studio practice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would just say looking at a lot of art, going to a lot of museums, watching movies. I love like golden age of Hollywood films, like 1940s and 50s. I just think that I'm inspired by the work that others are doing. So, reading as much as I can about other artists and like what's happening in the current art world. So like looking at artsy and like hyperallergic and just trying to be up to date with what else is happening in the art world, I think keeps me going. Almost not necessarily like a competition, but like a kind of like just wanting to know like what else is going on in the art world and trying to keep myself inspired by the work around me.
For me, art has been sort of this thing that pulled me in, because I was a creative director in advertising before. And so I started to form an art collection, and the art collection became very prominent to the point where like I had all these options and I could enter the art world professionally if I wanted to using this collection. So for me, the collection and collecting is kind of the most exciting part of being in art. And it got to be to the point where the collecting wasn't enough. So I got into curating, which is being even more involved with the process. And there's a spectrum of involvement too that really is quite interesting, because it can be institutional. So like the Denver Art Museum is an institution that I'm frequently donating to, and paintings go to that institution, and that involvement is really thrilling because it does have an impact on the artist's career. So, I think that for me, it's interesting to be impactful in some sort of way, whether it's small or large, with the career of the artist.
Absolutely. I think it's just because we kind of exist more in the same space, and that's the coolest darn thing you can do, I think. Apart from like, I don't have talent in the way that these guys have talent. So this is like the next best thing. Like my partner and I, Max, we always wanted to be artists, and this worked out. That didn't, this did. And it's just so cool to engage with people in a way that following up as like a support system.
Well, every artist needs a platform to advocate their work, to present it. It's it's an essential part of the world too. Your role in presenting the work is crucial as well.
Yeah.
And your installation, the care that goes into that is extremely important. This show is a statement, and without you, it cannot be made.
Yep. Everyone plays I think a role in it. So real quick for you guys, last two questions, same thing for each of you guys. If you could distill, what do we need to know about these two exhibitions? Go. Like you
take it away.
Yeah, take it away. Whatever you want everyone to take home with that, what is it?
I feel like I've already kind of said a lot.
Say it. You can repeat yourself. You can say it again.
Okay. Give me a moment.
Yeah, maybe I can just jump in and say that I think, this being like my first solo exhibition, my first kind of experience in the art world, I'm really, really grateful to Tanner and Max and Ted for this opportunity. But yeah, I think for me, it's my first chance to kind of, for the public, make kind of a statement of like, who am I as an artist? What is my work about? And I spent a lot of time in graduate school sort of figuring that out. I think that the kind of gift of that was just time to build a conceptual idea and underpinnings behind the work, not just like what am I aesthetically drawn to, but what is my opportunity to kind of imbue them with meaning. So yeah, to just touch on that, I'm from Georgia. I grew up in the mountains of North Georgia. I often say, like, both figuratively and literally on the stage. My dad is a scenic designer, but I think also being in a young woman in the South, there's sort of like a necessity to perform your gender, whether that's in physical performances, like the kind of like debutante culture that I touch on, or like beauty pageants, but also just in your daily interactions. So I think for me, the Dalmatian kind of, to circle back to that, became a kind of self-insert or proxy. I think that show dogs, particularly Dalmatians, kind of carry this almost like kinship, like they know what it feels like to be kind of prancing around on a stage and feel kind of like all of these expectations of like lineage and grooming and kind of these obedience. And so the dogs for me are kind of an opportunity to wrestle with that tension of obedience and defiance. There's a way for them to kind of have an aggression and a cuteness paired that I think feels really true to myself. So that's sort of like where the main imagery comes from. And yeah, I think the paintings are just explorations into a very diaristic look at my childhood, my life experiences thus far. And hopefully we'll kind of go off from there.
They're absolutely awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say, to me, the cowboy is such a iconic symbol. It's an American symbol. It means to me, or I think of heroism and independence and hard work, honesty, and this body of work and the work just in general, I hope that portrays that. I'm inspired by that, and that's what keeps me coming back. So it's a hard life. It's a fulfilling life that these guys live, and I do my best to honor them through my work as best I can, and in the way that I can. So thank you for coming and being a part of this with us. So
Thank you.
Well, that feels like a pretty good note to kind of get back to the party on. I want to take like real quick. Does any audience questions? Anyone for Ronnie? Yeah, first one up.
This one's for Catie. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the sort of the Dalmatians also as a proxy of your experience. You also see them, and maybe this is super obvious too, but also as a proxy of like the artist experience as well. This is sort of like, you know, the performative nature. Is there like now just another narrative now that you're out of grad school? Is that?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I do think that since I've left school, like I've sort of made even like more connections with them, and I can totally see, I think that there is like, I've talked before maybe about like paintings have this like inherent like desire to be looked at. There's like this voyeurism embedded in like an image that's meant to be stared at. And so I think that does like have a parallel with the dogs that are their performers, their, you know, show dogs, or in this case, I'm sort of reimagining them as like these unconventional hunting dogs. But yeah, I love that interpretation. And I feel like so much of me, I've realized I'm performing in these other little ways. So I think that performing as an artist, and we've talked too about like, you know, this kind of performative nature of social media, there's definitely some parallels there, that you're just, yeah, maybe it's always broader than just this Southern performativity. There's so much embedded in, I'm sure all of you can relate to just the kind of little social interactions, but yeah, definitely. Thank you for that question.
Anyone else? Anyone got a question? Hands. Cool. Well, let's get back to a freaking party, man. I mean, let's do it.